Welcome, everyone. Must have got something right tonight. Worked on the first try, unlike some other people I know. Didn't work on the first try, half the time. I was working on other things, so give me a minute here. I got to drill a couple holes, and we'll be good. And we'll get moving. If only I could ever remember what size hole it needs. I think it needs two, or two will work. Let's see whether something a little smaller would work. Nope. Actually, two won't work. 2 1/8, I guess. Gonna go big or go home, I guess. Cutting up some stuff yesterday. So I got a couple little nice little lengths of Bradford pear. The log has been around here for 3 years, according to what was marked on it. So let's see just how dry it really is. It's definitely not cut real parallel, but it's a small one. Try the other one. The other one's probably not much better. It's really kind of a nice, quick, easy way of mounting something. Kind of a little bit of a cheater's way, maybe. I don't necessarily call it cheating. I just call it being a little bit simpler. Lights on. Before Chuck's already out. Get the really little one first. Hoping to be able to do them both, really, but this little one might just end up being just a little bowl. You could probably cheat. Probably did a better job sawing them on bandsaw than what it appears that I did. Oh, look at that. We will live with that, I think. I do believe. So get a couple gouges out. Face shield, of course. And I'll screw up this top first order of business. So I know where we're going to when we get to the bottom part. Just use the lower part of the wing. Just ease into it. A little shearing cut sort of, cut. Just kind of listening for it to no longer be ticking. Definitely don't want to take too much out of it, any more than I have to. It looks like we managed to get the whole way around it. So, go over to there. We'll come around the back side and get rid of the corner. Not even really going to make it round first. And get rid of some of this on the corner. And then we can go from there. Wonders of doing little bowls is you can go pretty fast with them. Mainly wanted to get rid of the bark. Start to round that corner around there a little bit. Not worried about it being totally round. Okay. So, wires do we want? Probably just the two. Yes. Probably could have used them. Let's see where it's at. That's probably about what we want. So now we want the tool rest across the corner. So we make a curve. So we'll get pretty much to the top. Not sure this is going to be deep enough to do a little return up there. Just leave it at that for a second. I don't want a real deep tenon. Really not much of a need. It's a very small piece. I don't really remember how big this was to start with. About 5 inches. I think it's worth a little bit of a try to try and do a return up here a little bit. Just see, give it a bit of a look-see once to see whether that'll look right on something like this. I like it. I think it'll look all right. Do you believe? Might as well clean up our foot. We gotta get our shear scraper for that. Slightly above center. Get in there. Figure somewhere different for that light to be, not in the camera. A little concave in the middle. Something along those lines. Tiny little bit of decoration. Feels nice and smooth. Always check and make sure we're not. It's a little bit flat. Rather have it be just a shade bit concave. Not much. Doesn't need much. Really almost kind of a cheater's way of doing this. Certainly could cut it with the gouge. Where these scrapers sort of make you a little bit lazy in a way. It definitely cuts perfectly clean that way as well. Didn't even give it the little shear. Scrapey cut. Which even does better yet. I think while we're at it, I might as well, instead of having a flat foot, might as well give it a little bit of a, sort of a little beaded shape in there. Just a little round. Doesn't have to be perfectly a bead shape. The sandpaper will take care of the rest. Also left a burnish mark because of the back of the heel of the bevel. A little bit. I really like that part. It should have. Bradford pear, from what I remember working with it a little bit, is sort of just like the It's sort of like cherry. It actually works very, very nicely. It feels like it's dry. You know, it's been only been 3 years. I like a bead up in there, but I think this time around, I think I'll just leave it just like that. Yeah, let's switch a couple of dust collection ports. No time like the present to sand it. See whether it should be clean enough cut. It is. They actually start at 220, although there's some tool marks in there, so don't try and skip a step. Just start with 180. Keep the sandpaper moving. I'm not going to worry about that top rim yet. We'll get that from the other side. Definitely a line up here at the top from something. And it's that line from. It's a little bit of a dip. Make our bead round. And hopefully we have the jaws set it to, or have the right dimension in there. Sandpaper is just like our cutting tools. It's got to be sharp. Piece there, it wasn't quite sharp, at least along the edges where I wanted to use it at. Because it left a line in here at the base that I don't want. There's a downfall of putting them a beaded foot on them. It's right there. Is getting in there to sand that beaded foot without messing up something else like I did. Left the edge of the sandpaper come over here and touch that. There was a definite sanding line there. Sorry for reaching in front of the camera. So just go through the grids. 400. And when I sand like this, I definitely will go the whole way to the 800 because it's, even at 400, we're leaving 400 grit scratches. Looks better. We really want to be super scientific about it. We can do the 800 little random orbit circles. We'll break up any of the 600 grit scratches. A little bit more cumbersome to get in around that bead. Just takes a little bit of patience, a little extra time, well worth the effort. And that should be good for that part. Take a paper towel and clean it off. Not that it really would matter. Just get some of the dirt out of there. And that side's done, ready for finish. And if I was to grab it with those goggles, that would definitely leave marks. You have to be slightly bigger. Of course, to go bigger, it's also the bigger chuck. Brain running up and downhill. And we get about a 1/16 of an inch in between the jaws, so that should create a perfect circle in there and hopefully doesn't leave any marks. Okay, let's clean off our face. Okay, so let's look at our curve. More importantly, what I'm looking for is anything real disturbing grain-wise, which there is a little bit. It's a short enough bevel and the bowl gouge, I should be able to do that with the bowl gouge. Made the curve a little bit longer than what it was. Okay. we're going to hit it with the spindle gouge once because I think it'll cut. It's a tiny, if you look, there's a dark line which is perfectly clean cut, but right there is the last little, I don't know, eighth of an inch, something like that. It's not necessarily quite what I want. So a little touch with the spindle gouge, still left a little bit of a line. I think we can live with that. Probably could even take the shear scraper in there, maybe refine that a little bit more. All about the least amount of sanding that we have to do. Might as well allow them here. Make sure it's right before we move on. It looks right, but careful when we're making those edges because that edge right there becomes very sharp very quickly. It was already cleanly cut. Tell you what, we can go in reverse. It might make it easier. Easier to see what I'm doing when I'm sanding up here. Does a better job dust collection as well. So it's 400. 600, I'm going to go over that top edge. I want it to be clean and crisp, but I don't want it to be sharp. So far, so good. Kind of enjoy doing these little ones. So much faster to do. And I can lose the dust collection. Less noise. And the mount that dust collection hose sits on usually gets in the road. So let's see if we have any edge left on the swept back grind. Just be a little easier to get rid of some of the material. Remember, it's quite shallow. Leave a little bit left in the middle. Won't leave a ton. And we should have. That's what I thought. Need that to slope inward a little bit. Got another cut or two in there to take, so at this point I'm going to make it slope in just a little bit. It doesn't need to slope in a lot. I want to go back underneath the rim a little bit. Make the curve. Some of these you can make, if you want to, you can make them go way back in underneath. I don't necessarily find that it's totally worth the time to make it go way back in. It can go back in certainly further than what it did. I'm good for the first 3/8 of an inch. I need to go back a little bit further before the curve happens. Also need to touch that edge. The little razor blade right there. So you got to make this right up here. Although it looks like I'm leaving some lines. Being a little aggressive. But I'm getting where I want it to be. So now we can do a nice, really light cut. That'll live. Anything I didn't do was leave a little, sort of a little straight section. Just a little better place for the lid to sit. Also got a nice, much cleaner cut in there. Also left a very, very sharp edge right here. Little touch, goes away. Rest a tiny bit high. I like to sort of just flatten that out rather than trying to make a curve. I just find it works a little easier. I mean, that is lower in the center than what it is out here, but I also didn't try to continue my curve in through there yet. So now we can make the curve happen. Give it a feel. Feels pretty good, except we went a little too fast. We left ripples in there. I think that's going to be the curve we're looking for once that middle goes away. We'll come back and make one little light cut to the center. Something like that. leave a little ridge right there. Kind of one of the problems for me is I don't really have, I don't think, let's point it on, a round nose bowl scraper. It's just actually too big to get into that area. Other course of action could be just to go to a smaller bowl gouge. Just in this case, it's going to be a 3/8 bowl gouge versus a 1/2 inch bowl gouge. Lighter in weight, lots of tool rest around, and we'll try and sweep that curve just a little bit. I mean, it's not torn grain or anything in there, but there's just some little ridges. It's getting a little close to dropping off the end of the tool rest, but we managed. I was watching it. Still some little ripples in there, but that improved it a whole bunch. Give it a feel. Let me curve is a little abrupt right there yet. We have room, so we're gonna try and make it right. Temptation is to reach in and touch it while it's spinning. It's not a good idea because there's chips laying in there. I think that'll work. Inside, we almost always have to start a little bit coarser on sandpaper. Not a big deal. Could have a bit more of a flat edge in there though. I'd say a parting tool should actually work just fine for something like that. Because we're only going in just a little ways. If we were going in very far, then we'd have to use something different. Something like that. Gives it a little straighter top edge. That should work. As usual, we're back to the usual episode of sanding. A little 2-inch. Try it with that. I don't have much genuine 2-inch sandpaper anymore. We went to stuff that's 2 3/8. If it doesn't work, that's what I'll do is go to that. Surprisingly enough, the 180 actually took care of that. I would have said we would have to go little coarser than that, but we didn't. So that's a very big plus. Must still have some moisture and it's clogging the sandpaper up. You see it's building up on the edge. Might just be the fact that it's Bradford pear, but I'm thinking there's probably a little bit of moisture left in there, which also means we might not be able to actually finish this. Could have been sand in the wind while I was doing everything else. That's okay. Need to do the flat area. Dust out so we can see. Almost looks polished already, which is a plus. Let's do this little this little edge here. Because if I sanded that with the pad, I would probably just lose its flatness. Of course, I didn't really want to sneak in there any further like I did and touch the other area either. So just beat down a little bit more, sanding by hand, burn your fingers for one. Go around the edge, clean off in between. Mm, not good enough. Leaving a little bit of disturbed green, which we don't want. In that area. I'm going to take my rubber stick, which is laying here somewhere. There it is. Usually you can clean your sandpaper a little bit. One of these rubber stick things, clean it somewhat. So went the whole way back to 180, so that's not putting any bigger scratches than that in. Go to 220. Oh, a tiny little area. It's very hard to get into. Okay. Don't want to cooperate. You can see the bigger sandpaper doesn't, when you do it like that, doesn't necessarily want to stay on the pad very well. But it worked. So now we can just go through, finish out the other grits. This pad that's on here is a little bit on the stiff side in a way. So to watch it doesn't get the whole way off, or you can run the risk of ruining the pad. The Velcro touching the wood isn't a good thing. A little lighter touch. It's not a race, so won't make it one. We'll go to 600. Oh, that's good. Almost look like a polished surface. Which is really what we were after. Nice and smooth. Ready for some finish. Not sure whether it'll cooperate or not. Might give it a little whirl. Lastly, seeing some scratches right in that area. Trying to think. Don't think I have. Oh, wait. I have one on the pad. That would be 800. This is kind of the a little bit of the pain of doing such small bowls as the sanding becomes more challenging, so to speak. This little thing of random orbit with the 800 really does work quite well. As long as the scratches aren't of a real coarse grit, which they weren't. Probably more like 320 or the 400 that scratched it, that I didn't get out. And the last little bit right there. I try and do my work as best as I can. Okay, I think we're happy with that. Which is always a plus if you're happy with your own work. So now let's see whether we did a good job. Maybe a teeny tiny little mark in there. Nothing that anybody, unless you told them to look for something like that, they would never see that tiny little mark in there. We're going to need a much smaller kind of a holding chuck. Oh boy. Can't use that one. That has the wrong. That one should work. Like we need a little fresh piece of foam on there though. That's kind of looks like we got a little aggressive with something. Something about there. Knock the little corners off. Certainly doesn't need to be perfectly round. Might as well get fresh tape while I'm at it. Double-sided tape and dust doesn't necessarily not very friendly to one another. That'll work. Just enough to protect it. That's all we're really after. Get some things out of the road. What I tell the people in my classes is don't lay your tools on the lathe bed, because when they drop, they always drop butt first and the cutting edge goes up against your leg. That one wasn't in the handle, but it dropped, hit the mat, and literally landed right up against my leg. We're seeing how it's cold around here. I have long pants on, so it didn't do anything. Didn't have a chance to slide down my leg. Pretty even. But if I would have had shorts on, it probably would have cut me, even at that. So I'll put a little bowl over there. We're not worried about this being to to spin true, because all we're going to do is hold it at this point. And we're going to get all the dust off of it. And I need a glove or two. My wife had me working on a storage bin rack this afternoon. Kind of simple project in a way. It's all made out of 2x4s for the most part. It's the black tubs that you would buy at any of the box stores. They had them on sale. Mainly, I think they had them for some of them had them for Black Friday too, but a lot of them had them last week, which is what she saw. And they were like $7 versus normal $9. So we bought a bunch of them. Now today I managed to start on the base of the one. Okay, Parfix 3408 as usual. Piece of polyester felt in there. See whether stuff is dry. If it's not dry, it's going to cause me a problem because it's going to set up right away. Doesn't appear that that's the case. Like it's soaking it right in nicely, which is what it should do. But the looks of it looks like you're hardly going to be able to tell the difference that this is Bradford pear versus cherry. Kind of surprised. I never really worked with this much. It is kind of a common tree around here. Just never have been fortunate enough to get hardly any of it. A friend of my dad gave me some of this, like I say, 3 years ago. So we'll give it a nice saturation coat because it wants to drink it in, which is a good thing, great thing. As long as we don't find any pores in there. I should have put wax paper probably on the other side, but live dangerous. Now we'll wipe off the excess, because none can sit on the surface or it will not dry smooth and flat. Just what we want. All we want is what soaks into the pores of the wood. Basically going to fill the pores up. Once it sets, then we'll buff it. From there, inside of these small balls, I could use, probably maybe will use some of the fine abrasive paste as well on the inside. It's a little easier than buffing on the inside. It's the only reason I would use that on the inside. And look over and make sure we got everything, because once I hit it with the activator, it's going to start going. And then it's be a day late and a dollar short. So we'll give it 2 or 3 little sprays at a distance, not up close and personal. Probably like 18 inches away. And then went through the inside. That's a plus. And clean the dust off. Probably since there is some excess, in that groove because of because of the bead. We'll take just a little bit of microcrystalline wax. Super glue and wax is not friends. A little bit of my finger, and you rub it together, go over that, go over the inside of those jaws, the face of the jaws, wherever it may touch the super glued surface. Got a second or two to dry. A little slim on paper towels tonight. You'll get my roll. I think it's still sitting over here. I like the brawny Foursquare for in the, at the lathe. Seems like you waste less paper towels that way. This last go around with the brawny paper towels, somebody's idea of Foursquare is not very square to me. They're actually very much different. As you can see, there's a whole inch difference between them. So I'm not quite sure. Looks like somebody's boo-boo. I'll just wipe off the excess on the wax. And we'll just give it a really nice, super light touch, just enough to hold it. We're not doing any turning, so we don't need to have a giant size super duper grip on it. Need to get some more polyester felt cut for over here, but we can just use the paper towel just as well. Inside will take a lot less material than the outside did. By virtue of the outside is now filled. So the inside, whichever side you do second, put it that way, will take less material than the opposite side because the grain is already filled and the pores are filled from the other side. So it takes less to fill them up. But I also saw when I did that, I went over this edge a little bit. So I try and get that wiped off as quick as I can. Probably doing not quick enough. There'll be a place right there that already set up because it's on top of itself. It's also been activated. So it's kind of like immediate contact set up. Not the end of the world. It's just a little bit, tiny little bit of 800 grit sandpaper. Once it cures, I won't do anything till tomorrow. There's only one tiny little place that it did it. Not the end of the world. Easily straightened out. Little activation. Now we're ready to it's kind of a cute little size of a bowl. Probably could leave it as is if I wanted to. I have to think about that a second. I know what would look nice would be some curly maple lid on it, which I have a fairly good amount of. It's all lumber. It's all like 7/8 inches thick. course, when you need a little piece like that, you never have just a little piece. Let's see how big of a piece. I should have measured first. It would have made life easier. So we'll need a piece, 4 inches will be it. Mm, so might leave that go for tonight. Sort of think about that just a bit. Or not. There's a piece of curly. 4.5. We can live with that. Kind of never throw this kind of stuff away. Gets down to a pretty small piece and it's just fine. I'll lose my gloves too. I want gloves around any moving machinery. As you can see, when I move it around in the light, you'll see the curl going across it, which is always a lovely thing, my opinion. We can get back to overhead for the moment, see more of what we're doing. Of course, that ruler's not long enough. Other thing we could use is one of the corner ones. Can do this piece is more than big enough to do what we need to do, but we can go. If we were worried about it, we can go all 4 corners. That's all we need. Poke a little hole in the middle. And we'll really be kind of do it the simple way, just jam it right up against the chuck jaws. More than secure enough of a grip. Don't really need that big of a tool rest. But it will work for sure. Has a tendency to make the chuck jaws chatter a little bit, but not going to hurt them. You don't want to blow out the other side. We'll go probably 3/4 of the way across on this side. It should be at least close to round. Not quite. Might as well actually make it round. We'll come back straight. We'll angle that way. Get them pretty close because it all goes away quickly. Then we'll come back the other way. Even if actually you can see some big chunks that's being chipped off there. A little bit more. That should work. Still not perfectly round, but that's okay. Doesn't have to be. Now we need a pennant. I might as well use the bigger one. We need this will be the top of the piece. Once again, we could use a parting tool if you wanted to. And the guide for this as well. Get rid of a little material because it's going to go away. Give us a little pennant. Looking for a nice, crisp, clean corner down there on the bottom. Only about 1/8 of an inch long. More than enough to hold what we're going to do, what we need to do. Kind of the wonders of owning a couple different size chuck or jaw, chucks with the different size jaws on it. I want to set this one to the outside diameter. Thereabouts, because I'll grip this from the ends on the other side with a little recess. Once again, brain sometimes. A little lidded bowl. Keyword is little. There's the bowl part. It's already done with finish on it, except for the last little bit in the middle. Like it's signed in the name of the wood. This is Bradford pear. Probably if I wouldn't tell you that, you probably would say it's cherry. Very similar. At least my eye says it's pretty daggone similar to one another. So now we'll flatten out the bottom, because this is now the bottom. Won't take much to, shouldn't take much to flatten it out. Whoops, and I knocked the camera all out of whack. Other camera, not the one you're looking at. One you should be looking at, which would be that guy. So we'll give us a recess in there. This one I probably will just do with the parting tool. This parting tool is grounded at an angle that matches the dovetail jaws. So when they're probably about 1/8 of an inch, maybe a little bit more at this point. That's going to shrink down somewhat. Because I didn't, this is flat going across, I didn't make a little bit of a concave, which is what it needs. While I'm at it, I might as well take a little bit of material off the center. We'll do something different in the center of it. We may take and put a little bit of a bead in there. Really should have did this before I marked that. I did that in there. Would have made more sense. But I'm very much thinking it's going to need like something in there to make it a little bit more decorative. Which generally means a bead or two. I think before I get carried away on that, I need the measurement for the inside of this bowl, or at least thereabouts. So one about there. Looks pretty close. So I think we need to mark that as to where it's going to be. Okay, so I have definitely have a little bit more material to play with than what I would have anticipated. So we might as well put the bead. It almost looks like that's golden. Probably not, because that's probably not accurate enough to do that. It's also going to have to redo that little pennant in there, or recess. It's all good. Not necessarily sure I'm going to like that. I'll try it. Not sure I'm going to like that flat area on there, but I think it'll be okay. So we'll back at our angled parting tool. And just ever so slightly sneak underneath that bead. At this point, we only need a tiny little bit underneath there, which you probably really won't be able to see on the camera. A little bit more than what we got. So that should be good enough. Okay, that'll work. We might also make this nothing says it can't come the other way. I'm going to just leave a small little area out there. Not enough fuzzy edges. So we'll have to clean that up a bit. It probably actually would have been better to do that. Just grab the scraper and be done with it. It's just a shade high. Nothing wrong with a little bit of a dome in the middle of that because I got to drill a hole for the lid or for the knob up there. So a little bit of a dimpled area certainly won't hurt it. Less likely to go through the bottom of it. I'm just going to texture that, but I think I should give it a quick little bit of a sand in there. Looks like there was a little bit of disturbed grain. This curly maple can be a bit of a troublesome child sometimes. It won't take much to get rid of what I was seeing. Also sand that little flat area a little bit. That was 400. Now we can give it a little texture because we're busy making tops. So the texturing tool's already out. The biggest seller at the craft store is Thinking Tops. So let's go close to center. Drag a line out. Not that. Highlight it a little bit. can do that one more time. Wants to bounce around in there a little bit. That'll leave me a little room around the outside of that rim yet. To put some information on it. Now I'll just give this a little bit of a sand, 600. That's it. The texturing tool has a tendency, you almost have to do a little bit of something over on it, whether it's just a Scotch-Brite pad or something else, just so that it's not so sharp. And it has a tendency to lift up a little bit as well. Definitely something I'm sort of working on as far as to get better with the texturing tool. Making 100 million tops is sort of helping the situation, very much so. So now we can work on a little lead. Razor blade. If we measure right, that should not fit, which it doesn't. The taper has to be a little bit more or a little bit less of a taper. This is all side grain, so this is not going to be a super tight fit by any means. I actually want this sort of to be a bit of a loose fit. Switched over to the spindle gouge to make it a little bit better. Not quite. And I have a tendency to leave these sort of tapered in virtue of there's less contact area at the very top of it. So as it decides to move in the seasons, at least this is my thought, is it'll just sort of pop itself off of the top. So it's got movement, so that's where we want to be. I'll take my pencil, put a little line around there so I know where the outside rim of this bowl is at. Be better if you wouldn't put a pencil line on the bowl, but it will buff right off. Or a little light touch of sandpaper and it'll come off. I can mark that the whole way around. So we know that's the inside of our inside edge of the bowl. So now, guess we could sort of make this last one into a bit of a half a bead, maybe. Maybe even come back a little bit the other way. It won't be the uniform bead that the beading cutter made, but it'll be a bead nonetheless. And nobody will be any of the wiser. And probably before I get carried away and forget about it, probably should give that just a little lightweight sand on that bead. Because the beading cutter ones don't really need any sanding, especially on a nice hard material like this. If anything, you can touch them with a little bit of like 400 or 600, just to make sure there's no little fuzzies on them. And that's really all there is to it. Now we can just rid of some material. Again, I don't want to blow off the top edge of it. And just sneak up on this a lot. The one I did for the Wednesday night group a couple weeks ago, I'm going to redo that one because I got it a little bit too big. So there again, this will become a full bead down here, inside and out, when it's finished. I think we could go a little bit, tiny bit smaller. I can, and there again, the way we're going to mount this, I can do both sides from the other side. So it's not something I got to keep farting around with on this side. I think that's good enough for that. But there is really only one time to sand this little edge. That would be like right now. It's a little easier to do it from this side than it is the other side as far as to reach around that corner. Even though there will be a fair amount of room to do it from the other side. Good enough. We'll stop at 400. Yeah, we'll. The chances are I'll probably end up touching that from the other side. So switch over to the other side to get the inside grip. Well, I couldn't have used. Really couldn't have used that size jaws for a recess. I'd have been. I wouldn't have had no beads left on the inside. Put it that way. I'd rather it to be a little decorative, decorative on the inside. Paintbrush and clean up that little groove because we sanded all that in there. Because it is a very small groove in there. Actually, for the most part, for me to tell somebody that's how they would study that and not be able to figure out how I held on to it. Yeah, because there's very minimal in there. So now we can shape the top. We're going to lose quite a bit of material on the top. So that would be way too bulky. Get rid of some of this diameter out here at this outside edge first. That way we know where we are going to. Actually, I'd rather use my swept back grind bowl gouge. That big one probably doesn't have much of an edge on it. I could probably use my little mini one. All I'm doing is making a curve, using the natural, sort of the natural curve of the bowl gouge to make that basically half a cove in there. Just works very easily. We're going to lose some more material on the top for sure. Otherwise this will look very heavy. That looks like a fair curve. And now we'll drop this down. Somewhere thereabouts. And then we'll make this curve into a cove. Giving us a very simple Roman OZ curve. Quick and easy and sort of painless. In this case, I'm standing directly in line with what I'm doing so that I can see the shape develop. Nice light touch. Not too big of a flat area in the middle though. I do this time I'm going to try and leave, I don't know, maybe that much of a flat in the middle. Just makes it a little easier with the knob that's going to go on top of it. If it has a little bit of a flat area instead of round the whole way to the top. Didn't do that when I did this the other Wednesday night. I mean, there's two ways of doing. I mean, you can leave a little flat in there, or then you have to undercut the knob. It's a little easier to have left a tiny little flat in there, which I didn't do. But in the same token, that one that I did for the demonstration and on the other bowl, I still have this recess in the back, and it's still sitting here. There's nothing says that I can't put that back on. I probably will because I think it was a little fat too. And reshape this. Takes a little bit more material out of this, then make just a tiny little bit of a flat up on top of it. So now what I'm going to do is hold it up and look. Not really, if I can show it to you in the right fashion, how I'm looking at it. Looks to me, I mean, I think we're all right. We could use a little bit less maybe out here. A little less of that, a little bit less of that sticking over the side of the piece. Not that it really looks bad, I don't think. Just think it could be a little less. But we sort of have a little bit more of a hump up here. So I think we got probably 5/8 to 3/4 still left in the center. So I think we'll just take this whole thing down, make it a little bit thinner. It is the wonders of using the simple little recess to do this kind of work. Pretty much the only time I use a recess for this type of work. I don't use the recess to do any of the bowls. So let's take this down And about another eighth maybe. And then we're flat again, so also said I wanted to remove a little bit of this out here. A little sort of a shear scraping cut. Also left a very, very sharp edge on it. We'll come around the other side. Gotta be a little bit careful out here because it is pretty thin right there. It's just a nice, gentle little touch to it. Give our shape another look, which doesn't look real good. Needs a little bit more out of there. Okay, I think I like that. I'm going to cut. I'm going to sort of cut a flat here. Or maybe even use the scraper. Let's see what we get. Now I'm actually going to make a cut. This will clean this all up. Nice, slow pace, small little 1/16 of an inch cut. I'm not worried about that not being round out there either. A little bit of sandpaper takes care of that. But now this is perfectly clean. No torn grain, no nothing like that. Still a little concaved in the middle. Or a little sort of a bump. So just use a scraper to make that sort of a flat area. Just a small little flat. I'll still undercut the rim or undercut the knob for it as well. So we're back to our favorite pastime of sanding. It's probably why I sort of enjoy making the tops and such things as that, because tops do not require any sanding. Um, so start with 180 because I want to round this corner off. Easiest thing with the sandpaper rather than trying to keep messing with it with the tool, because it is very thin out there. If I keep messing with it with the tool, inevitably you will do something that you really would regret. And I guess really before I go to all that work, I should have took one more peek at it. I think it should be right this time. Yeah, thinning that down makes a world of difference. It's also thinner on the rim, on the lid. Curve could be a little bit different, but I think it'll look just fine. And I'm kind of the one that needs the suit, so I'm gonna say it looks okay. Done. I sort of like making these little bitted bowls. I'm not sure why, because I haven't sold one of them yet. I just think I neat. I don't know. I guess the last thing we should do for that part, you need a hole in there with a knob, which will be a 3/8. I use a 3/8 inch hole. Actually, should have looked at that before I took it off of there. I'll give it a feel, look at my fingers. Oh, there's still quite a bit of material there. I went about the depth of the Forstner. This is a Forstner bit, so pretty much go full depth of the bit. Just a shade more, and that should be good. Now the outside of this, actually might as well show the finish on it while we're here. It's kind of the challenge of doing these all at one time, is that probably should have thought outside the box a little bit, because I could have just as easily finished the inside, or yeah, the underside of this while I had total access to it. Now it becomes a bit more challenging, so to speak. Curly maple is really pretty though. So might as well do as much as I can. I'll do just this top part of the rim. while I'm here. Crack is always the hardest part to get in there. So a little bit of glue on the tip of the bottle on that, so it goes down in that little crack. Give it a good rub in. That should be good enough. Like always and before, I'm going to dry off the excess. Hopefully you can see the striationality of it when it spins around. Not sure whether the camera will show that very well. It doesn't a lot of times. It's also something, if you wanted to, you could sort of play around with the dies a little bit on something like that. I'm sort of into doing these without doing any messing around with the die. I usually don't necessarily get the result that I want. So that's outside, or the lid, pretty much complete. That's finishing the inside part of this. Which how I will do that is to literally wait for it to dry, or almost dry, or yeah, wait for it to dry. I can sit it on something, a little donut chuck or something. I could, once it's completely dried and cured overnight, I could probably actually grab it on a vacuum chuck. Can't do that when there's any kind of liquid that can come through, because the vacuum would pull it through. So there's our little lidded bowl. We still need to make a knob for it. Bad part is I normally use the same material, the knob, as I would the bowl. And that will be a challenge for tonight anyhow. Because when I cut this stuff up, I don't think there was any kind of material left over. I have a different one, which that would be, to me, that would be way out of proportion for a knob on that. Should be more dainty than that. That's the one off the other one that I don't necessarily like the shape of either, but that's never a good thing to drop it on the floor, though. And that's pretty much our 2 hours worth. And here's the one that I did for the Wednesday night group demonstration like 2 weeks ago, something like that. This is Sapele. This thing has not been sanded at all. It's just been cut. I did leave a bead on the rim out there. The lid is actually a little bit too loose for me, but it was held the same way, just a recess in here. So since this one to me is too fat, too thick up in here, maybe I can come out in this area somewhere and put a little bit of a tenon on there, and I'll just cut deeper down into here to tighten it up a little bit, which will reduce this outside thickness, and then just reshape this a little bit up here. It's probably still, at this point, I would say it's probably a solid 3/4 of an inch in the center. So that's probably a little bit too much for this size of piece. And it is way too loose is one thing, but I can move it a whole 16th of an inch before it hits. That's just a little bit too loose as far as I'm concerned. And it's a little bit, it'll, this bead and this bead to me should be about the same thickness wise. So it will get, of course, this part just gets sanded. It's ready for sanding basically. I don't try and make these super thin. I don't feel necessarily the need to make them super thin. Could be a little bit more undercut underneath that rim, but you know, to me it would be a little candy dish with a lid. So I don't necessarily feel the need to be any different than what they are. Other than that, it is 8 o'clock. That's our 2 hour time frame. So I think we'll just call it a night. Come back and I'll have to go over in the scrap bin because I know I cut pieces because that Bradford pear log, I got some other blanks that are closer to 3 inches. So I probably will do the same thing with these, just on a deeper basis, maybe. Or leave them as an open one. There's another thin one here that's wider, bigger in diameter. So, other than that, anybody have any comments, questions? Otherwise, we're going to call that a wrap. Till next week, see if I can find some. Sure, I can find a chunk of the Bradford pear that was big enough off of some of these bowl blanks, hopefully. If not, I have a small little log here. It's actually a branch that I was probably going to make into a mushroom because the bark is really, this thing is pretty much dried. There's a little bit of cracking going on there, but I could make that into could make it into a mushroom. If I can't find enough of that Bradford pear material, I could also carefully cut this across this way on the bandsaw. As long as it sits pretty flat, I can cut straight across with the grain. Could cut a chunk out of there and then just square up a section in here, and then I could get the knob out of the same material, somewhere thereabouts. Or just take this other little blank and cut it into squares rather than a round blank. Something to get those little knob out of. But other than that, we're going to call it a night. And we'll be back again next Saturday. Or not Saturday, Sunday evenings. The new time that we're going to do this stuff. Pretty much every Sunday evening that way. Until then, you all have a wonderful week. Stay safe in your shops.